All right, guys. Thank you for joining for part 2 of our testing office hours. We're going to continue working on what we did yesterday. Yesterday, we covered red, green refactor. So you want your test to fail, then you want your test to pass. And then once all your tests pass, then you can refactor your code. We talked about Spring auto wiring and how the Spring context works and injects dependencies into your classes. We also talked about Mockito, which allows you to make fake objects that you can then control the behavior so that you can isolate the logic of each of your classes. And then we even had a sample problem where we tried to make a test for a method that creates a random pizza. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue on talking about testing and mocking. And I'm going to show you how to run a Spring Boot test for like the repository. And then I'm going to show you how to write tests for the controller. So let's go back over here. So if you guys remember, there was a, I didn't get to explain this part right here. So in this, right here, this method is generate pizzas, right? And we should have a repository save 2 pizzas. So what we wanted to do in this method right here was our action was generate the pizzas. Our arrangement, or to prepare the test so that we can actually execute this properly, we created 2 pizzas that we're expecting to be generated. And then our assert here is we check that the Mockito pizza or the mock pizza repository was actually called to save that pizza. So if you go over here on generate pizzas, you're going to see that these 2 pizzas that are created or generated inside match these 2 pizzas. That we want to verify that we actually called the save method on this because we want to show that we're actually saving the pizza. And then finally, and then that's it. So the way we checked to see if we called it, we did mockito.verify mock pizza repository.save first pizza. Okay. And what's cool about this is if we change this, if I like change this to 1L or like 3L like this value does not match this value. And so when you try to save this pizza and you try to verify that you're calling this pizza, you're going to fail because this value is different from this value. Okay. And this happens because we set up lombok, we're using the @data annotation, and we implemented lombox equals and hash equal and hash code annotation. Okay, so you get value-based comparison by using lombok, which is awesome. So if I go ahead and run this, this should fail because it's going to say, wait up, you tried calling .save with a pizza that has 3L in it, but you should have called save with the pizza that has null in it. And let's see what happens here. Okay. So right here, it says arguments are different. It wanted a pizza repository, wanted pizza repository.save pizza ID 3, right? Because we're basically saying I want to verify that save with this pizza is being called, and it failed because it says right here actual invocation has different arguments and it's a pizza with an ID of null. All right, any questions there? We cool with this? Okay, I want to show you something else that we can do to verify this. So I really like this code because it ensures that we are calling save with the actual correct object. But there's another way you can set this up too. You can do this. You can do mockito.verify, and then you can do mock repository, right? And you're going to do .save. But instead of using an entity, you're going to use mockito.any. Okay. But what you're going to do here is you're going to put a comma here, and you're going to do mockito.times, and you're going to put 2. So what this is saying is this thing must have been called twice, and we don't care what was actually passed in. I just want to make sure that you actually saved it twice. Okay. So this is one way you can test it. This is another way you can test it. It's up to you on which one you want to use. I think this one's better because it ensures that you are actually calling it with the right parameter. But if you don't always have ideal situations, so if you had to test it like this, you can also do it. And you can do mockito.times 2, you can do 1, you can do 0, okay? Depending on what your test is or what you're trying to test. So we'll go ahead and run this, and this should pass because this is because the .save method was called twice. Yep, and it still passes. Okay. Any questions?
Wait, do you mean that because you changed that from back to null, right? It was able to pass because of.
Yeah. Well, that's this.
Yeah.
So that's this right here, right? But I was basically saying that you can also use Mockito
that's 2 ways.
to verify this. Yeah, to check it a different way. And Mockito.any is pretty useful. All right. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and actually test Spring. Okay. So when you go back to the project here, you're going to see here that you have a pizza. Or no, I'm sorry. We're going to go to repository. We have a pizza repository, right? The pizza repository. Man, we can cover JPA right now too. Okay, let's do JPA, a little bit of JPA. So pizza repository extends JPA repository here like this, right? So what's cool about JPA is it has magic methods that allow you to define a query. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example one. We can do list. It's code based on method name. Crazy. So I'm going to do list, and I'm going to return a list of pizzas, but I want to return all the pizzas of a specific size. So let's do find all by size. They have to match. So if I go to pizza here, then the pizza size. So it's size. So the name of the field is size. So this will work. Find all by size, and then all I'm going to do is put parentheses pizza size. Okay. And what this is going to do is this is going to return all of the pizzas of a specific size. Isn't that crazy? That's a DAO method right there that we don't have to write. Okay. So how do you test it? So like the reason I wanted to do this is because I want to show you one that you can do this with JPA. All you gotta do is just Google JPA, look at how you would do dynamic queries with method names, and they're gonna give you all sorts of rules that you can follow to basically create your own queries. But the reason I wanted to show you this also is because it gives us a reason to actually write a test. So you're gonna hear a common phrase like "don't test the framework," okay, or "don't test other people's libraries." It's very tempting to just write so many tests that you start testing other people's code. In this case, you can write tests to test that the JPA repository is working properly. But there's a problem with that. They've already written tests for it. You're just wasting your time. Like the Spring Boot engineers have already written tests for all this stuff, and they can assure you that it's working. So you don't have to write tests for them. What you have to write tests for is your logic and how your classes interact with Spring Boot. So there's a fine line. You gotta be able to clearly state how you are testing your object. Even when it's tied into Spring Boot, you gotta figure out, okay, what do I actually have to test? So that I'm not just wasting my time writing tests for the Spring Boot framework. Without this, any tests that we write here are basically testing the framework because the methods are already pre-populated and implemented for us. But here, I'm actually creating a method through JPA with a specific parameter, find all by size. So I would like to, how do I even know that I wrote the method right? So it would be nice to actually go in and actually test it. So what you're guarding against here is not the JPA library, right? What you're guarding against is somebody typing in find all a typo, like find alls by ID. That's not going to work for JPA. So you want to make sure that you have a test that will also make sure that when it runs this, it will actually work. So let's do this. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and right click this, and I'm going to extract this. So show context options. I'm going to create the test, and we're going to just hit JUnit 5. We're going to hit OK. And notice how it creates the folder here, and now there's a pizza repository test. And this corresponds with the repository package here and pizza repository. So there's the Java folder, and then there's the green there's the main folder, and then there's the test folder, okay? And there's like a one-to-one correspondence here. So now that we have this, what we want to do is we want to create a Spring Boot test. So now when we run this, and let's go ahead and do this public void dummy. Now that we run this, it's going to spin up the Spring Boot context for us, the whole framework, okay? And the way you can tell is because it's going to have the Spring logo pop up. And you can see everything passed, which is good because sometimes if your beans are not set up right, this thing will break, okay? So now that we have that, let's go ahead and actually auto-wire our repository. So what we're going to do is we're going to do @autowired, and I'm going to do MockRepository like this. And it's not MockRepository, I'm sorry, it's PizzaRepository. All right, so let's call it PizzaRepository because it's not a mock, it's a real one now. Sorry about that, I'm confusing you guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a real version of the PizzaRepository that's going to connect to some database. We don't know which database yet. I'm assuming it's going to be H2, but this is something we might have to configure, okay? So the pizza repository is going to try to connect to database because we're running @Spring Boot test. And yeah, okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Let's see if it works. So in here, it's loading default profile, bootstrapping, Spring JPA. Yep, and it works. Great. Okay. So now let's actually check. Let's check to see if we can find the pizzas by size. Okay. So let's do pizza repository.find all by size. So remember, you write the method name here, find all by size, and then returns all small pizzas. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take pizzas. Do we have a pizza builder? Yeah, we do. Cool. We're going to do size, and we're going to make it small. So we're going to have one of them, right? Oops, dot build. Then we're going to do the same thing with pizza 2, pizza 3, pizza 4. Let's do a bunch of them. We're going to do this. Okay, we're going to make these two small. Then we'll make these all medium. Let's take this one to large. This one's going to be extra large. All right, and now we have two smalls, large, medium, extra large. All right, and then what we want to do is we're going to then take our pizza repository. So I'm sorry, what I'm doing right now is arrange, act, assert. Okay, so arrange, act, assert. Right. So you guys walk me through this. How would you guys write this test? What's the action first of all?
Is it the function you want to check? Find all by size.
You want to check. Yeah, exactly. So pizza repository. Find all by size. Right, and then the method name says it should return all small pizzas. So I'm just going to put small here, like that. So what do I do next? How do I assert it? How do I know that I have small pizzas? Only small pizzas. And just because I was going really fast, the find all by size here is supposed to return a list of pizzas.
Do you just got to do like a loop to check if every element in there has size with a boolean, or is there a fast way to do that?
Okay, yeah. There's no you don't need a for loop. I actually would not like a for loop. But first of all, what do you got to do first to even check it? What do you need to do with the data?
Oh, so you got to put that in a list somewhere.
Yeah. So how do you do that?
Just declare it, a list of
declare
pizzas.
List of pizzas is equal to pizza repository find all by size. So then what kind of assertions do you want to make?
Well, you can check to see if it's your setup had too small, so you want to make sure your size is 2.
Yes, good job. Assert equals 2. Now, okay, so check this out. Assert equals has two values. there's the expected value and the actual value.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So whatever value you actually want, you put first. So it's expecting 2. So we when we count this, we're expecting, yeah, I need a small build and I need 2 smalls. And then how do you get the actual value? What do you call it to get the actual value?
To use that size function
Yeah.
from pizzas.
Pizzas
Pizzas dot
dot size. Perfect.
size, yeah.
Good job. Okay, but I also like what you said before. You have to loop them to actually check that they're small, right? Because like if we just check the size and it's 2, that's
Yeah.
okay, but we don't actually know if they're small or not, right?
Right.
So then how would you write the next one?
Oh, I guess can you just check?
Yeah.
The actual whatever's in that
Yeah.
position 0 and position 1.
Yep.
And just compare it to see if it is a small.
Yeah. How would you write
so
it?
Start
Yep.
equals
Good.
whatever that small value is.
Cool. Small. Yep.
With pizzas, was it get or something?
Yeah. Yep. Pizzas dot get.
And then position 0.
Good.
And then do that with 1.
And get size.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Good size.
Good. All right. Cool. So there you go. This is a good test right here. You don't want to loops complicate things.
Yeah.
You want to be very explicit, very
Yeah,
straightforward.
because you actually did the range yourself. You know it's supposed to be in there essentially. You
Yeah.
don't have to.
Yeah. And you want anybody who comes in to read this, they need to understand like what you're doing basically.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, we have an issue here. Like this is going to fail because I didn't actually save them to the pizza repository. So that's something we have to arrange here. But
Oh, okay, yeah.
so this, now remember, this is kind of weird because remember, it's a Spring Boot test. It's loading up the Spring context, and it is trying to create a pizza repository, a real one, going to a database that is actually going into an H2 database. Okay, and you can see here that it was actually 0. It expected 2.
Yeah.
Well, the reason for that is because it didn't save any of these things.
Yeah.
So let's go to, we're going to do pizza repository dot save. Oh, let's do save all. Yeah, save all list dot of pizza 1, pizza 2, pizza 3, pizza 4, pizza 5, like that. That should work. So now when we save all this, it returns a list of all the saved objects. Cool. So once you save all of this, then when you do find all by size, then you should get 2. So let's go ahead and run this. Running Spring, you see the Spring logo, so that means it's running the Spring framework. Also notice how long it's actually taking. This test is taking forever to run. It took 1 second, 439 milliseconds. I was working with my son once with the client, and it literally took 5 minutes to run all the unit tests. It was a horrible, horrible experience, and it was my son's first. It was my son's first job as a developer. He hated it. He was like, "I do not want to be a developer. I'm out." And so when he said he wanted to live in a cardboard box. That's how much he hated it. And when I joined him, I was like, "You're right. This sucks. This is horrible." And the reason for that is because every one of their unit tests was using Spring context. It was so bad, man. It was so bad.
Are you saying that they didn't decouple like with the mock stuff?
No,
Why?
they did. No, yeah, they kept running everything black box. So there's different schools of thought. Some people are like, "Yeah, you got to test everything real all the time, no matter what. I don't care, right?" And that's the price they pay for it. It was the sanity of their developers. Oh my god, it's so crazy. So yeah, that's why they have that testing triangle, because the unit tests are at the bottom layer, and there's more of them. You want them to be really fast. Then you have integration. Then you have your end-to-end. This, because we're using the Spring framework, this is considered an integration test. All right, because I'm creating a real version of this, and I'm using Spring Boot annotations. I'm letting the framework structure this, and then I'm actually creating a H2 database behind the Spring Boot's doing that for you automatically, which is awesome. And then the pizza repository is connecting to it. So I like this one. Let's do this. So what we're gonna do at test public void find all by size. You're gonna love this. Find all by size returns all medium pizzas. Okay. I'm just throwing so much stuff at you guys. Please stop me if you have any questions. So I'm gonna just do this right here, right? I'm gonna make this medium here, like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find all by size by medium, and then I am going to assert that they're all medium. Are you guys all cool with this code right here? Like basically, I copied this code, put it in here, and I'm just checking that we have 2 mediums now. Everybody cool with that? Do you think this test will pass?
No, are you saying that the database is going to have the old stuff from the previous test? That was going to happen?
Maybe. I don't know. Let's see. I could be proven wrong, but it's a database, so theoretically the database will have everything. And I have actually seen this issue out in the field. Look at this. It's taking forever. Jeez, come on, bro. Okay, so right here, boom. It expected 2 mediums, but it says it has 3. What? How does it have 3? Well, the reason it has 3 is because, by the way, you're not guaranteed of order for these tests, okay? So this test actually ran first, and it saved the medium to the database. And then over here, it saved 2 more, so now the count is 3, and that's why this thing failed. Crazy, right? Whenever you see any, so let's go back and run it again. Let's see if the same test fails. It might be. I don't know if order is changed, but I've seen it with other frameworks that you're not guaranteed at the same test. Yep, it's the same one. Let's do it again just to make sure. Sometimes you'll see them flip-flop. You'll see the other one fail and the other one pass. Sometimes they both pass. Okay, it's still doing it. Sometimes they both pass, right? Sometimes it fails 1 out of 10 times. Okay, whenever you see a test randomly fail, or look, you're gonna hear this one a lot. I run this one, right? I run this one, it's gonna pass. See, it passes. So you're gonna hear somebody say, I run the test by itself and it passes, but when I run all the tests, it fails. So when you hear that, that is a telltale sign you have a state issue or a state condition. where what's happening is you're having the state of one test, which in this case is you have a small, large, 2 medium, and 1 extra large being carried over to another test, and it's making your arrangement messed up. So can anybody think of a way to make sure this doesn't happen?
Did you do the add before tag and
Yeah.
build up there and then find a way to initialize it so that you see your database?
Yeah. So before each public void setup, I mean you can use everybody uses setup. I also like to use run before test, but we'll use setup for now. But PizzaRepository.clear, I think, no, delete all. So we're just going to do PizzaRepository.delete all at the beginning to make sure that everything is cleared out. And let's go ahead and run it. Please do not write Spring test. Do not be McConnell's or company and try to go with that full black box thing. It'll kill you. Okay, so it works now. Awesome. Another thing you can do is you can do after each. So basically, after each, you can just do public void setup or public after each test. It doesn't really matter when you do it, but you got to definitely delete everything like that. So we can take this one out. Let me just comment that out so you still have it. And then we'll run this code. And you'll see that both of the tests will pass as well. Biggest takeaway, this will make you the hero. 100% will make you the hero. You're going to see people that are running one test and it passes. And then when they run all of them, they fail. That is a state condition. You got to go in and figure out why it's doing that. It's probably going to be, it's like most likely a database issue. They're hooking up to the database and the database is retaining data. Any questions on this?
So what database is this actually using? Is it like from your real database or production?
No, no, this is using an H2 database. So right here it says H2 console available. So what it's actually trying to do, so right here, you can create a resource folder here that matches this one, and then it'll follow.
Oh, I see.
It'll follow the application YAML. It'll treat it like it'll treat it like its own application YAML here. In fact, we can do that. You should do new package. Nope. You do it's up here on test. Do a new folder, and you should see resource bundle.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm sorry. I've never done that. I'm pretty. It might work, but I usually do directory, and then you can just select resources here, and now you have a resources folder. So if you wanted to, you can create your own application YAML in here to configure it to suit your needs. But because we already have H2 set up in our application YAML by default, it is. See right here how we already have by default it's H2. It should automatically use the H2. All right. So what we can do is let's go ahead and do this. Let's paste it here, and what we'll do here is we'll call it test. I think by test is done by default. And I'll get rid of this because we do not want to run tests. We always want to run, when we run our tests, we always want to run it locally on H2. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to run this test and let's see what the profile is. No, the profile is default. Oh, look at that. It blew up. Failed to load application contest for test class. Pizza repository. Oh, cool, because there's no default on here. So you see how it failed? Because it's trying to use this application YAML. But because I have on profile test and not on profile default, this thing, it's not finding anything to connect to. So there is no H2 database. But if I put comma default here, like this, then when I run the test, it'll automatically try to go here.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and try it again. Okay, and profile default, and there it is. It found the data, it created an H2 database, and then from there it was able to use it. This is super helpful, by the way. Super, super helpful. Let's see what else we can do. Let's go into a controller now.
Wait, so like, if you don't set up the H2, it'll use your actual database?
Yes. If you by default,
like it'll actually save that crap in the database?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
So as we have it set up now in Oz?
And then if you do PizzaRepository.delete all, it'll delete everything.
Oh yeah. That's why I was.
Yeah, but if you're following the way I set it up, then you should have H2 running by default on your local. Like if you go here, and it's the way we have it set up, it's local default, and then this is where you have your H2 running. Here,
we don't have H2 at all.
Oh, well then get H2 set up, man. H2 sweet.
Yeah, but we kind of like to live on the whiskey side, you know what I mean? We don't need tests.
Okay, good. All right. Any other questions? So the hallmark of a true professional is testing. Would you want to go to your doctor if he has not practiced surgery, right? Or would you want to use medical equipment if it was not properly tested at the factory? Or would you want to get in a car that wasn't properly tested? Or do you think a rocket should be launched into space without adequate testing? Like, answer is obviously heck no. All those things have to be tested. So why the heck are you releasing software that's super important, that can either generate millions of dollars or that can save lives or that can kill people? Why the heck are you releasing software without tests? It is inexcusable. 100% inexcusable. You're a professional. You're getting paid a crap ton of money. You have to show professional pride and just have the discipline to be able to follow through with that. And it's going to pay dividends for you. There might be other developers that don't have the same opinion that you do as far as testing is concerned. Your boss might not even have the same opinion of testing. It doesn't matter. You're a professional. You make sure that you provide high quality code. And like I said before, by writing the code, it actually protects your code and it also defers the blame. Anybody else who messes up your code, they're going to know automatically when they're doing the PRs. Nobody's going to be looking at you for the issue. They're going to be looking at other people.
It should reduce bugs.
And it should
Cool,
reduce
cool.
bugs. Yeah. Okay, so let's see here.
One of those people is me.
It's okay, Ethan. You're still young. I used to think the same way until I wrote when I wrote SoulQuest, 2 years of code, and it got to the point where I tried to add a new weapon, I would break the code. I tried to add a spell, I'd break the code. I add a feature, I break the code. Like, it was horrible, and I did not want to touch my code because I felt like I was playing Jenga with it. But as soon as I started putting in tests, it was so awesome. I enjoyed coding again, and I knew like how to organize the code so that I could add new things easily. So it was awesome. So hopefully, eventually, you develop that kind of love for it as well. All right. Okay, so we got the pizza repository. Now let's go ahead and check how to test a controller. So, and let's see here. We're going to go to the controller here. We're going to have a pizza controller. So here's the thing. You have unit test and you have integration test. Remember that, okay? We do not want to create unit test for all of our, we don't want to create unit test or integration test testing out like all of the logic for the pizza controller. We should have unit test our individual logic, and we try to minimize the number of integration tests. So the only thing that is on, like you can test all of this stuff with pure Java. The only thing that you can't test with pure Java are the annotations, okay? And so when you write the integration test, what you're really testing is, did I fat finger or did I do a typo for the endpoints? So will it catch if somebody accidentally puts pizzas instead of pizza or cat or something like that? Pizza cat instead of pizza. They were sending an email about their cat and then they typed cat in there by accident. Will your test actually catch that and prevent that from getting passed through? Okay. You don't care about anything else. You don't care if it's supposed to return a 404. You don't care about all you care about with this controller is, are the endpoints set up correctly? Now, when you set up authentication, because those are also Spring Boot annotations, you're going to want to write an integration test to test that authentication as well. But you're only testing the things that Spring Boot introduces, and you don't want to actually test the feature of that Spring Boot. You want to test that the connection between your class and Spring Boot is working properly, basically. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. I don't have this memorized. It would be cool if you have this memorized, especially if you're if you have to take a test. But let me just go to my GitHub real quick, and I think they have it in their AI CRUD. Bugwars AI CRUD. Let's see what we got here. Let's go to source controller. Oh, test. Java controller. Nope. What the heck? They don't have code camp. Bug. Oh, there you go. AI controller. Come on. You got it. They don't. I don't think they have an integration test. Shoot. Oh, I know how I can do it. I can search for MockMvc. So let's search for MockMvc. MockMvc. There we go. Okay. So to do item controller integration test. AI controller. Okay. Look. AI. There's a separate service for the AI controller and it uses MockMvc. This is great. Okay. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and test this and hopefully, or copy this and hopefully it still works. It's old code, so it might be outdated. But let's go ahead and look at it. Okay, so now that we have, let's go to pizza controller here, and then we're going to then create a test here. And we're going to create the test, and it's going to go to pizza controller. Instead of calling it pizza controller test, I'm going to call it pizza controller integration test. All right, and that just shows you that it is an integration test. And I'm going to do the same thing with this pizza repository test. I'm going to write down that it's an integration test, so that we know that it's actually an integration test. Okay. So now that we have the pizza controller test, we're going to do at Spring Boot, and then we're going to do at auto configure MockMvc. So now we have this, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create this auto wired to MockMvc. And so what this thing does, MockMvc is like Postman. If you guys are familiar with Postman, you know how Postman you use to test endpoints. You make a call to the endpoint, and then you get some sort of body back or whatever. MockMvc is basically a Java version of Postman. That's it. And once you understand that, it's pretty easy to use. So let's go ahead and actually write the first test. So test public void, and the first test we're going to have for our controller is going to be, we will call get all pizzas. So we're going to do get all pizzas returns okay. Okay. So what we're going to do, so notice how this is an integration test. I don't want to actually test real logic here as far as the pizza repository. I have to make sure the pizza repository is calling find all. All I care about is my endpoint work? So I'm not going to be doing this. So check this out. I'm not going to be doing pizza controller dot get all pizzas. Okay. What I'm checking here, this is for the unit test. What I'm actually testing here is if I call MockMvc dot get and then pizza, when I call this endpoint, is the endpoint being rerouted to this method right here? That's what I'm checking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's going to give you like what a status is.
Yeah, it'll be a status. Okay. So let's go.
That.
Yeah, and I'll show you how to assert that. So first things first. Well, let's also do this real quick. So we're going to do auto wired, and we're going to do. I'm going to write another test just to show you how to use it, but you don't really have to do the second test. Okay. So all right, we'll cover it in a little bit. So get all pizzas returns okay. Okay, and then the first test we're going to have MockMvc dot perform, and then you're going to perform a MockMvc request build. This is all pre-built with the MockMvc. We're going to be using .get. So we're going to be using .get parentheses, and we want to call /API/pizza like this, right? And then after that, we're going to want to do a get dot content code, content type, and expect. Yep. Okay, cool. So all we got to do is just do that, and I'm gonna hit enter dot and expect request matcher. Shoot, come on. Request matcher dot okay. Oh, you gotta do this. Status is okay. Okay, and so I just got to import this, and then you see how this thing's red. It's saying unhandled exception. Add exception to method signature. I'm just gonna add that in here. I'm gonna add the exception to method signature. It's a test, so we're good. Just throwing it there. And when we run this, we want to make sure that it comes back as okay. So let's just start simple with this. Okay. So we're gonna do mockMvc.perform mockMvc request builders.get/API/pizza, and we're gonna expect that the status is okay. So let's go ahead and run this. And remember, because this is doing a Spring context, it's actually creating a new database. It's creating a database for us and setting it up. All right, and it returns okay, great. So let's see what happens if I put in pizzas. Okay, so if I try to run this, this should now fail because pizzas does not exist, and it should return 404. Yep, and it failed. And the reason why it failed is because it expected 200, but the actual was 404. So where is this 200? Where I don't see an assert here. The assert is right here and expect. Okay, so the assert is included as part of the mockMvc command. Okay, and usually you see it written like this because usually you have like more stuff added to it. Okay, but let's just put that one liner there. Okay, any questions on this so far? So what we're going to do now, I'm going to add another test as an example. Okay, so add test get all pizzas returns list. You don't need to write these tests. Well, I'll leave it up to your judgment if you want to write these tests. Okay, because
you fix that other test.
It's already
Previous
fixed.
test? I thought you put pizzas and not pizza.
Oh shoot, yeah, let's put pizza there. There you go. Thank you. This is why we do pair programming.
Right.
But it's funny too because if I ran it, it would have failed anyway, so we're good. Okay. So, and because remember, it takes so long. Like this takes so long, man. So we want to make sure that we're not testing everything here. I'm going to give you examples. So the test below should actually be unit test, not integration test. You're going to butt heads with certain people. They're going to say, nope, I want to make sure that everything's being tested. So I'm doing this for those cases where you're going to work with the manager who's like, nope, I want everything tested as an integration test. Go get it done, type of thing. All right. So if you want to check that there's a list there, right? You can do dot and return. Okay. So when you do a dot and return, you are actually returning the response from. This is where it acts like Postman. You're now returning the response from mockMvc. So I'm going to do mockMvc perform dot get and expect and return, and then I'm going to go here and I'm going to create the local variable MVC result. Okay. So now that we have this, I'm glad that we picked a list too, by the way. Now that we have this, we're going to write the next command. This is something you should memorize, not memorize, but at least have it in GitHub somewhere. So you're going to have list of pizza, and it's going to be called actual list. Oh my gosh, come on. Response. Get response. Okay. Okay, sorry. Let's do this. Okay. So the MVC result is passed back as a response. If you want to get what's inside of the response has all sorts of stuff, right? It has the headers, it has what the original request was. I don't know what this get handler is. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes with it. So what you want to do is you're going to go response.get response, and this is going to return the actual body. So I'm going to then put result is equal to this, and it's going to create a mock HTTP server response here. And then if I want to get what's in the payload itself, when I do Postman, you know how when you call the endpoint and then it returns everything as a JSON object? That's what we basically want to do. We want to find that JSON object that was returned to us. So we're going to do result.get content as string. Okay, so I'm just going to make a thing called string JSON is equal to result.get content as string. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this with the JSON. Okay, and then I have to do this special type reference command here that basically says, I want you to convert the JSON that you see. I want you to convert the JSON that you see into a list of pizzas. All right, that's what this line of code is doing. That's what the mapper is. So there's a reason why I use the mapper. The object mapper basically maps objects into JSON, and it maps the JSON back into objects. Okay, but the thing is, you need to tell it what kind of object it's trying to create. So that's why you send in this new type reference list pizza. Replace with, wow, it's weird. Oh, that's cool that I can do that, but I'll keep it there anyways. So I'm telling the mapper, I want you to go through the JSON, but I want you to parse the JSON based on the list pizza class here. And then I want you to put those objects into this variable called actual list. Okay. And then once we do that, we can then see what's actually in the list. All right. So let's go ahead and run this. And there should be, now remember, this is a real database that it's calling. So there's nothing saved there. So when you actually call this, this should be an empty list at the end. And when you go here, oh shoot, what? How is there 7 pizzas? Oh, because of this. Nice. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so because we have the data.sql, it initialized the 7 entries in there. You got to be aware of that, and then you can go ahead and check that out. I'm not a big fan of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do it before each, and I'm just going to delete the repo. So the way to do that is you're going to do another auto wired here. Auto wired means, see, the thing is, the database is already set up. The mock repository is already in there in Spring context. It's already doing its thing. Okay, when we do auto wired and then we're saying pizza repository, what we're basically saying is I want you to grab the pizza repository instance in the context and put it inside of this variable so that I can use it as well. Okay, so now that I do auto wired and I have the pizza repository, the real pizza repository. Now I can go here and do before each. And then here I can then clear all area. I can clear the database. Does that make sense?
And it's on the H2 database, right?
Yeah, this is the H2 database. So when I go ahead and run this, when I'm now going to have an empty, I'm now going to have an empty list. See how we have an empty list now? So this is cool that with Spring Boot Test, you're actually running the application the way it was meant to be, but you have the option of messing around with different components if you really wanted to. Any questions on this? I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I'm going to keep those objects so that we can actually print them out here again. Did anybody have a question? Okay, well, I'm rerunning this, and I'm showing you that, yep, this right here has the list of pizzas. If this was returning one pizza, let's do this now. Let's do post or get mapping pizza ID. Shoot, I forget. Pizza ID, and it's going to be public pizza get pizza. And then you're going to do return pizza repository. Oh, this is a good one. Find by ID. And we're going to find the ID by the ID here. So we're going to do path variable. And it's going to be integer ID. And we're going to do find ID here. It's supposed to be a long. I'm sorry. Let's put a long. Okay. So now that we have this, we're returning an optional here. So optional is equal to pizza repository.find by ID. And what you're supposed to do here is if the optional is empty. So if the optional is empty, then we should throw some sort of exception. So we'll throw a new pizza not found exception like this. So that's one way of doing it. Actually, no, we don't want to do that. What you really need to do is you need to, there's actually multiple ways of doing this. Let's do all of them. So we're going to do try, and then we're going to do a catch, and then we're going to do pizza not found exception. So I'm going to show you all the different ways that you can do this, and then you guys can pick which ones you want. So this one's pizza not found exception. We're going to create this class under the exceptions package. All right, and then here we're going to extend runtime exception, and then here we're going to make a constructor for public pizza not found exception, and then we're going to do string message, and then here we're going to do super message. So what we're doing is we're making pizza not found exception be a inherit from runtime exception. So basically, this is our own runtime exception that you can pass in the message, and then the message will then send it back up to runtime exception so that we can then display whatever error message we want to give the user. Now in here, there are multiple ways of doing this. So remember, a controller is only supposed to deal with HTML logic, okay? So you don't want it, what I was doing with the optional is empty and all that other stuff, like, no, that's too much business logic. You want it to either return a 404 or a 200, basically, that's it, all right? So we're gonna return pizza service dot get pizza, and then we're gonna then pass in the ID like this. So notice how it doesn't exist. We're gonna have to create this. I'm gonna create the method here, there you go. And then in here, we're gonna implement it real quick. So pizza repository dot find by ID, and then we're going to pass the ID, and then we're going to make this equal to the optional, just like we were doing before. So now we have the optional here, right? We're going to then say if optional is empty. So that means if the optional is empty, we are now going to throw an exception. So we're going to say throw new pizza not found exception, pizza with ID of ID is not found. Okay, so we're passing back this exception with this error message. And then if the optional is not empty, right? If there's actually something in the optional, by the way, if you forget what an optional is just a basket. So instead of returning null, because you don't know if null is intended or not, is it a null pointer? Was it done on purpose? Did you give me a null value on purpose, or is that a bug? Like the sending back to null can be confusing. So that the optional handles that, because when you have an optional, it can either be empty or full. Okay, and anybody who sees it, if there's an actual optional object, like you can do this too. I'm sorry, I'm going into the weeds here. So you can do this too. Optional pizza optional is equal to null, right? And so if you see that if this thing's a null, you know that's an error. Automatically, you know that's an error, because this thing's designed as a basket. So this basket, if there's a pizza inside of it, that's what we're checking. We're checking, is there a pizza inside of this basket? No, then that means that there is no pizza found. We remove the ambiguity of the null. this is basically saying that this is intended, that there's nothing here. So we now got to throw an exception because it does not exist in the database. And then on the other side, if there is
Wait,
something,
what happens if find ID returns a null?
it doesn't. Find ID always returns an optional.
Always returns an, oh, I see.
Yeah, it always returns an optional. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is done by JPA because they wanted to get around the whole ambiguity of returning a null or not.
Okay.
So, so find by ID returns either an empty optional or an optional with a pizza in it. And then we go, if optional is empty, then that means that the pizza does not exist in the database. So that's why we throw our pizza not found exception. And then here, if we're at this point of the code, that means there actually is something in the optional. So all we got to do is just return optional.get like this. Okay. So this method right here, if it does not exist, it throws the exception. If it does exist, it just returns the pizza. All right. So back to our pizza controller. In here, get pizza. We're going to return the pizza service. So if there is no exception thrown and we have a pizza, we return the pizza. Perfect. It works. But here, if we catch pizza not found exception, we have issues now. We need to figure out how to return error 404. Okay. And the way to do that, I forget how to do that. I always forget how to do this. Return or Spring Boot controller response parameter example. Okay. Yeah, let's see. How do I retrieve query parameters? Nope. How to use response status annotation. That's what we were talking about, Ethan.
Are you Googling or what are you?
Yeah, I'm Googling. Sorry, I'm Googling right here. Shoot, come on. It's a special method that automatically that is automatically given to you in your controller method. And I always liked it, but I don't remember the name of it to search for it in my GitHub. Here it is, HTTP servlet response, res. All right. So this is just a special trick that you got to know. If you put this inside of your as a parameter inside of your method, you now have access to the response body. And so now what you can do is you can set response dot set status, and we're going to set it to 404. And then what we're going to do is we're going to return a null to the user. Does that make sense? We can test it. I'll show you how it works.
Right. Test it.
Let's test it. So now that we have this method, let's go back into the test here. And we're going to then, let's just copy this test here. So we're going to do get pizza. Get pizza returns okay, or returns pizza. Right? So let's just make a pizza here. So where's the old pizza that we use from our other pizza service? Let's copy that one. So we're going to get this pizza right here. And we're going to put it right here. So now we have a pizza here, but this is going to be null. No, it's going to be 1. Null. We'll make it null. Because what we want to do is we want to actually save it. So I'm going to do first pizza is equal to MockRepository. I'm sorry, I keep calling that. PizzaRepository.save first pizza. So what I'm doing here is I have null. Notice how there's null here. I'm saving the first pizza to the database, and I'm returning it and putting it back inside this variable. Why am I doing that? Because when I print this out, you're going to see that it now has an ID assigned to it. And because I cleared it, not because I cleared it, I'm going to set up a state condition here if I do that. I'm just going to delete it at the beginning. That's the thing. You can't. I'm showing. This is like we're going really deep in the weeds on what kind of issues you can see with these tests. So public void before each test. Let's go ahead and delete the pizza repository. All right. So now that we have this, we're going to go back here and right here we're going to save the first pizza. Pizza repository.save pizza. We have the first pizza here. We're going to print it out. Right. But now I'm going to do API pizza/1. So there should only be a 1. To be on the safe side, we're going to do this. We're going to add first pizza.getID. Why am I doing this? The reason I'm doing this is because just because you delete your repository doesn't mean you reset the IDs. So like, let's say you have this test and you're saving multiple records across multiple tests. There's an internal counter in this database that saves the ID to 1, then it saves it to 2, then it saves it to 3, then it saves it to 4, and so on and so forth. Even though you delete all of those records, the next one that you create is going to be 6, and then it's going to be 7. So delete all doesn't reset that internal counter. So I can't go in here and just assume that I can put the value 1 here because I am not guaranteed that the ID that comes back from me saving this is going to be 1. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
So I mean, these are like gold nuggets I'm giving to you guys. You might not ever see them, in the field, but this is the kind of stuff that you're going to face when you are out in the field. You're going to find little weird things like this. So I'm saving the pizza. Remember, this thing could be executed at the end, right? So I already have 10 records before. They're already going to be deleted. And then when I do pizza repository.save first pizza, it's given an ID of 10. All right. I'm writing the test. So even though the ID is 10, I'm going to try to get that pizza. And then I want to make sure that whatever pizza I get, so here, so I get the response, I get the JSON as a string, and then I map it into a pizza. So I'm going to do pizza, actual pizza is equal to mapper.readValue JSON, and then I'm going to put pizza.class here. Pretty straightforward. Like that. Okay. So this is how you compare. This is how you convert the JSON into a pizza, and I'm putting it into the actual pizza variable. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do an assert equals first pizza, because this is my expected pizza, right? I expect it to be this pizza. I want you to compare it with the actual pizza. They should both be the same. And then we'll just print it out just to see what it actually is. Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and run this. We should get 200, and we should also see that the first pizza does match the actual pizza. So when we run this test, yeah, this is again why you should be testing this as vanilla Java. This is business logic. You should be testing this as vanilla Java, not through this right here, right? So right here, you can see here that the pizza that we say, oh wow, that's right, because the data.sql created the first 7, we deleted it, and it generated a pizza with ID of 8. All right, cool. Prove my point. Great. So this test passed because once we saved it, it had an ID assigned to it of 8. Then when we called get API pizza 8, if you want, we can do this. So string URL is equal to /API/pizza /plus first pizza.get ID, like that. And then we'll pass the URL in here. But before we do that, we'll print it out here so that you can see what the URL is. All right, so let's go ahead and run this test again. If you're not getting tired of that Spring Boot logo yet, oh man, I say give it a few more days. Okay, cool.
We're all very tired of it.
Okay.
Or at least I am. Maybe I'm the only one that's watched it different times just today.
Yes. So right here, this is the URL. We're calling /API/pizza/8, and then we are getting the is okay. And then when you compare the pizzas, the actual pizza and the original pizza, they match. So you're good. We're good on this. That code works. Let's see what happens if we change this to pizzas, right? And we run this. This should fail. We should get a 404. Okay. Yep. We got a 404 here, right? So let's go back and change this to a 9, and let's see what happens if. Well, let's just copy this.
Yeah, wouldn't they be separate tests?
Yeah, we want. Yeah, definitely different. Yeah, I mean, you can always go back and edit it, but yeah, you definitely want to make it a separate test because this test is already good. We're already good with this.
Well, that time one should be like with valid ID or something, like the name of the method, or the name of the test, I should say.
What's that?
The name of the test should say, oh, you like up there it should say returns pizza or valid pizza or like.
Returns pizza and OK status.
Yeah.
I mean, but you already have an OK status up here. Oh no, you don't. Never mind. You're good. All right, let me just take out these S outs. You always want to take out the system outs when you're writing your code. Okay, so we have that test. Now let's run this test. What we're going to do now is we're going to put in 50,000 here. We're guaranteed that that's not going to exist, basically. Now, when we run this, this is where I'm going to show you things. It should already work, but oh no, it's not going to work. It's going to fail because expecting is okay. So that right there is going to make it fail, I think. Yeah. So right here, it expected 200, but it is actually 404. Why this test is useful? You need this test. Why? Because over here, instead of doing response.setStatus 404, you could catch the pizza not found exception and then return null like this. And so when you run this, this is going to pass when it should not pass. This should fail basically. Let's see what happened here. Oh, is it because I was trying to map null? Let's see what happened here. No context to map due to end of input. Yeah, so we return null and this thing broke down here. Okay, but it didn't fail at the right spot. It should have failed right here. So what we want to do, what kind of status are we expecting? If the ID does not exist, then we need to expect is not found. So we should be expecting a is not found exception when we run this. So let's go ahead and run this again. Okay, yep. Now we have a good working test because this test is now saying we expected a 404 because this ID does not exist. We expected a 404, but you actually returned a 200. So this is why we use this code right here. So we try to send this. We try to call the service to get the pizza. If we get a pizza not found exception, then that means we're going to have to return, or we have to return a 404. And the way to do that is you can use this. You can pass in the HTTP servlet response as a parameter, and it'll automatically come in for you. It's a Spring Boot trick. So then you can do response.setStatus, and you're going to set it to 404. So now that we have that, and we run this, actually we should kind of like hide that right there. So now when we run this, this should now pass. Yep, and it passed. URL was API pizza 5,000, 50,000. We actually saved another pizza in here, which we don't need, by the way. We don't need to save another pizza because we just want to see if it does not exist. So the URL is this. We're going to then pass that into, we don't even need a response either because we just want to check that it is not found. So we take the MockMvc. Let's go back and do this real quick. So no, we don't want to do that. So let's just take this out here, and then we can take this out here. This is a good, clean test. We don't even need to add return. And return means you're returning a response. We don't need to return a response. We can just do it like this. Does that make sense? Maybe we can even make it one-liner. Yep, we can just make it a one-liner. So when we run this, this should work. Okay, I'm going to show you multiple ways to write this method. So the first method, we're going to use V1, V2, V3. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this. and I'm going to do v1 here. And we're going to do response entity pizza like this now. So instead of returning a pizza, we're going to do response entity pizza v1. Okay, and we don't need this anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to return new response entity. And if you go inside of here, the response entity returns a status code. So we're going to do OK, comma, and we're going to pass in the body for static constant. And it's going to be, shoot, what is HTTP status? There we go. Oh, did I put it the wrong way? I think I might have put it the wrong way. Yeah, I did. All right, cool. So if you wrap your object with response entity, instead of having to pass in the parameter, you can just do return new response entity pizza service like get pizza ID, and then OK. And then here, what we want to do is return new response entity, and it's going to be not found, like that. Okay, let me take off the HTTP status thing, so that you know what it's supposed to, what it belongs to. So that's HTTP status OK. All right, and this is HTTP status not found. All right, any questions on this? So
This is another way of doing that. What you just showed earlier.
Yeah. Another way of doing it, and I'm just going to go ahead and type this in. So this is v1/pizza, and this one is called get pizza v1, returns 404. So then when we run this, this should now return also a not found. But what you really want to do also is you should rerun this test to check that the OK is coming in. So like I'm kind of testing logic here, but my main emphasis is, am I getting the proper HTTP results? Because remember, the controller's job is to talk in HTTP to whoever is talking to it. So I just want to ensure that this OK is coming back and that this not found is coming back when I call the endpoint. All right. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it, let's see what else we can do. Oh yeah, this is a cleaner way. This is kind of a clean way of doing it. Yeah, let's do this. Let's just copy this. We're going to do v2 pizza ID, and I'm going to do get pizza v2. We're passing in the long ID, but this time what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take off the response entity to keep it as a pizza. So I'm just going to return pizza service.get pizza ID like this. All right, and notice how I'm not doing a try catch, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside of the exception here, for pizza not found exception, and then I'm going to put on top of here a @response status, and in here a response status, we're going to put in HTTP status dot not found. No, wait up, it's supposed to be value equals HTTP status dot found, comma, and then the reason is going to be equal to that pizza does not exist. Okay, so this is another Spring Boot trick. Yeah, you can put the response status on the pizza not found exception, and then when you run this code, you should get back a not found. Yeah, over here, I'm sorry. You should get a not found with that particular message there. So let's see if we can do that. I'm going to copy this code again. I'm also going to see if I can actually get that response. That might be too much research. Let's just do this. So I'm going to copy this. We can check through Postman. So I'm going to do pizza v2, return error 404, and I'm just going to call this method. Notice how this should crash the program, right? Because there is no try catch, and I know I'm going to get an exception. But when you run this, it's going to return error 404.
V2? Your URL is v2?
Ah, shoot, my bad. Yeah, good catch. Oh, it didn't get to run. Okay, let's do it again. There you go, it passed. So the question is, which one of these do you want? Which one do you like the most? It's up to you. Oh, and then finally, let's do another one. I kind of like this one. You can do a project here, and we can create under controller, we can do a package called responses, like this, right? And then here you can do new Java class pizza response. And then we're also going to have new Java class basic response. Okay, so the basic response is going to have a private string error message like this. And then we can then do something like, we're going to put our lombok here as @data. So private string error message, yeah, we're good there. And then here under pizza response, we're going to extend the basic response here. We're also going to do @data. We're going to do equals and hash code call super, because that's going to be I'm just going to comment this out, but we're going to get that warning. And then basically what this is saying is equals and hash code is only generated for this class and the child class and the fields. It doesn't include the basic response fields for if you want to evaluate by value, if you want to compare by value. So equals and hash code call super equals true incorporates both the pizza response and the basic response and puts it all together to make sure that you're comparing by all those values. That shouldn't even be a problem for us, but that's just to let you know what that means. So public class pizza response extends basic response, and in here what we want is we want to actually have a pizza. Okay. What does that mean? So what that means is when I come over here to my controller, we're all over the place. We covered all sorts of stuff. So we're covering error handling and how to test and all that. So that's pretty good. So I'm gonna have a version 3 here, right? And in here, we're going to have public pizza. No, we're gonna have pizza response, public pizza response, and it's gonna be get pizza version 3, and it's gonna be add path variable long ID. And then here we're going to pizza is equal to pizza service dot get pizza by ID. Okay, let's put a try catch here because we're gonna need that. And then we're gonna catch by pizza not found exception. Okay, so now we do. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do pizza response. Okay, pizza response response is equal to new pizza response, like this, right? So as soon as we get a pizza, we're going to put the pizza into the response. Set pizza. We're going to put the pizza in the response like this. But if we get an error message, what we can now do is we can do response.set error message to e.getMessage. So whatever error message we defined inside of our pizza not found exception, when we call it through the constructor, it's going to come in here, and then we're going to set it into the error, and then now we can return the pizza response. Does this make sense? Are we good with this? Yeah? Okay. Let's write a test to show you what I mean by this. So we're going to go to V3 here like this. And what we want to do is, I'm going to show you a good and a bad version of it. So let's go to get pizza returns. Okay. And let's copy that over here. Get person version 3. So we're going to save the pizza. We're saving it to the repository. We're going to call V3 like that, right? Get the ID. We're then going to call and return the JSON. But instead of doing pizza class, we're going to do, or pizza.class, we're going to do pizza response.class. And it's going to get mad at me because I'm expecting a pizza. It should be a pizza response. And let me change this variable name to be pizza response. And in here, I'm going to assert that pizza response.get pizza is equal to first pizza. But what I want to do is I want to just s out pizza response. Yeah, let's just s out pizza response so you can see what it looks like. And then down here, when we call this guy right here, we're going to copy the same code up here, except this is going to be 5,000. So let's just paste that there. And this is going to be not found, is not found. We're calling 50,000, and we're going to take out this assert because it. We'll do assert. Then I'm going to do pizza response dot get error message. So this is actually a good test. This is a good, like, if you have to do black box testing with integration tests, this is a good test to check that the error message is correct. If you have to do, but remember, you're trying to minimize the number of integration tests you got to do. So let's go ahead and run these. So first one, let's run this guy right here. So when I run this, you should be getting the JSON or the response for the pizza should have a pizza value and it should have a null error value. So when we run this, it passes. And when we go in here, it says that the pizza response has a pizza equal to this pizza right here. Cool. It didn't even print the error message because the error message is null. So it didn't even print out the error message field. Nice. The next one is going to be when we run it with error 404. So we're going to call with 50,000, which means it does not exist. But now we're going to get this really cool. We're going to fail right here because I expected it to be empty string. But we're going to just copy the text. But you'll notice that when we call this, oh shoot, look what I messed up. It's returning a 200 instead of a 404. So I got to go fix that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pass in the parameter here, and it's going to be HTTP servlet response like this, right? I think that's it. Yeah. And then in here, I'm going to set it to 404. So response dot set error message. Nope. Oh shoot.
It's that status.
Yeah. I'll put res. Don't like that name. I'll figure out a name for that. So res dot set status, and it's going to be 404. The problem is that I use response here, and then I use response here. So
Oh,
what I'm
gotcha,
going to do, let's rename this to response body like that, and then this is going to be the response. And so here we can then do response stat. I don't even know if that's a good name, but I prefer it. It's fine. We can continue on with this, but just this response is the one that I have to. You know what? Let's just rename it to HTTP servlet response. So you know without a shadow of doubt that it's a different response. HTTP server response, we set it to 404, but we are still, the thing is, look how I'm not crashing the program here. I don't return or I don't throw anything else. As soon as I catch this exception, I set the server response to 404, and then I set the error message of my response body, which is pizza response, to whatever the error message is from the exception. So I'm basically allowing a good response and I'm allowing a bad response by using this pizza response wrapper class. I'm making it so that I can use this for a good response and I can use this for a bad response. So when I go ahead and run this now, it should pass, or it should fail right here. Yeah, it should fail on the error message. And yep, it failed on the error message. And what was the error message? The error message says pizza with ID of 50,000 is not found. Let's go. So I'm going to copy this. I'm just going to paste it here. I cheated. So now when we run this, this should pass. Now, I don't know if you guys remember writing this, but if you go in here to the pizza service, we threw the exception right here. If the option was empty, we're going to throw a new pizza not found exception, pizza with ID of ID is not found. And there it is right there. The pizza, oh, wait, what? Oh, something got messed up on my pizza response. That's why I wasn't, oh, that data was not calling the basic response. Let's try this equals in hash, and let's run it again. Now, our tests are not going to, nope, no, it's fine. The test will pass. It's just a display thing. Yeah, it's not coming out. I'm gonna have to figure out how to do this, but what we're gonna do is, let me just run this locally, and then we can use Postman to test against it. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, and then let's go ahead and call Postman. And with Postman, we're gonna call localhost 8080. Here we go. So let's create a new endpoint. And it's going to be localhost 8080/API/v3/pizza/1. And let's go ahead and send it. Yep, and there it is. Error message is null, and we have a pizza. Anyways, you guys can see this right here. Okay, so error message is null, and then pizza is returning ID of 1, size null, sauce null, display name. This is basically what we saved in the data.sql file. Okay, so now that we have this, if we go ahead and put in 50,000 or 5,000 on this and we hit send, now we should get an error 404, which is here, right? And then we also get error message, pizza with ID of 5,000 is not found, pizza null. So we got this now, and yeah, so even though the error message is not popping out when you do the S out, it's still, oh, I bet you it's the toString. So let's see if we can get that fixed real quick. It's under pizza response. So pizza response at toString call super. Yeah. All right, cool. So now when we run this, it'll have both of them. So let's go ahead and run this test again, and then you'll see both of them, and you'll see that the error message is included in the body. Okay, so I'm going to show you that. Then I'm going to show you another trick with the JSON parser. Okay, so yeah, right here, super basic response, error message equals pizza with ID of 50,000 is not found, and pizza is equal to null. So this is how Longbot displays it. You don't really care about this. This is just for you. You really care how this is getting displayed, right? And so error message null can kind of seem like there is an error, right? You only really care about pizza at this point. So what you can do is you can make it so that when you come to JSON, so this is a thing that a lot of people miss when it comes to IntelliJ. Okay, and you have a controller here, right? And you are passing back. Oh, let's actually call response entity. Let's call v1 pizza and see what that returns. But when you're returning an object here, right? And you automatically forget and take for granted that this thing has to be converted into a JSON object, which is this. It doesn't happen automatically, right? Or it doesn't happen by itself. It has to be done. You have to write code to convert the object into this type of format. Does that make sense? So what does that in Spring Boot? What does this in Spring Boot is a thing called Jackson. So Jackson is the library that maps objects to JSON. Okay, it's all done under the hood. And when you go into the pizza controller test and you see that I'm using that object mapper, I'm using Jackson. You better believe I'm using Jackson because I want to use the same mapper that the controller is using. Okay, it doesn't make sense for me to use a different mapper because I might run into different issues, right? Like I need to test with the mapper that is being used by Spring Boot. And so when you scroll up here, the object mapper here is using com.fasterxml Jackson data bind object mapper. All right, so this is what I mean by it's using Jackson. And so whenever you have to Google anything about the JSON mapping, you look up Jackson. That's what they're talking about. You can put it on your resume too if you want. Okay, so now that you have that, right? Actually, if you're really good with Jackson, like if you really understand it, then you can put it on. Don't put anything on your resume that can shoot you in the foot. Okay, so now that we have that, let me explain what you can do. So in Postman, we have null here. Let's just hide the stuff that is not included. If we don't need to know about it, let's just hide it. So how do you do that? So under pizza response, there is a JSON property here. And I'll even show you this. So you can do JSON property here like this. And if you do pizza like this, then what will happen is it will map this to a JSON object with capital PIZA. So if I go ahead and rerun this, then when I run this right here, it's going to have a capital PIZA here. So this is cool. If you're, see how it's a big pizza now? So you can control how this text looks like from that JSON. If you see something like pizza API or something like that, and this is not following the camel case format of Java, you can use the JSON property to then map it like that. Okay, but remember, this is only for JSON properties. So if I'm calling an API and I'm getting an object that has a pizza underscore API field, then I can map that text into a Java object with the field of the camel case version of it, and vice versa as well. Okay, so if I do it like this and then I run this, shoot, I think I broke code. Let's keep it as pizza. So if I run this, it's going to say pizza underscore API, but in my code, I'm not going to be referring to it as pizza API. I'm going to be referring to it as the pizza. All right, so let's go ahead and rerun this again so you can see that. Yep, pizza API. Okay, so we're going to take advantage of these JSON properties, these annotations. I don't need this. I'm going to delete it. There's another one called JSON ignore, I think. JSON, not ignore. Ignore properties. Shoot. Ignore properties. Ignore unknown. True. So ignore unknown equals true, like this. And so now when we run this, oh shoot, we don't want this on the pizza. Yeah,
Trying
let's
to do
take that
for error
out.
message.
Yeah, we're just doing it for the error message. Yeah, and so now let's go ahead and rerun this. And so if error message is null, it won't be displayed here. It'll just show our response. And I chose the wrong annotation. So let's see what the annotation is. Jackson, JSON, hide null fields. Got him. I used the wrong one. It's this right here. JSON include non-null. Okay, let's go back and rerun this. Why does it have JSON include not include? Is that the right code? Oh, that's weird. I can take this off. Oh wow, I just put it back in. Okay. All right, let's see. Let's test this out. We're going to send it, and it should. Yep, there you go. Because there's no error message, it hides it now.
If you do get error, it will show it.
And if you do get an error, it will show it.
Yeah,
So let's just
yeah.
put a big error there. And now, yep, error message, pizza with ID of this not null, and then pizza's null. Cool, right? Okay, and let's see what else we got here. So now that we have, oh yeah, let's check out V1. So we want to check out V1. What does the response entity look like? So when I go to V1 here, so just a reminder, if you go to the controller here and you go to V1 pizza ID, right, we are returning a response entity. This is a Spring Boot wrapper. Okay, so instead of making a pizza response class, you can just use the Spring Boot provided response entity class. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. So if I run V1, I get status 404 not found, no message here. And if I do 1 and I hit send, then I get, oh, I just get the pizza back. So the response entity is an invisible wrapper. The reason you use it is because then you can actually set the response status in it. Let's see if we change this to record is not found. Oh, it's not going to let me because it has to be a pizza. But I can still do this, and it'll still let me, which is weird, right? You don't want to pass back an empty. Why would you want to pass back an empty pizza with the not found? It should be null. But let's see what happens when we run this. Don't do this. I just want to see what it looks like. So we're going to hit that, and then when you hit send, it's going to. Yep. So it's a pizza with everything null and false, and we have 404 not found. We don't want to do this, so we're going to go back and take this out. And instead of passing back null, we can just keep it like this, and it won't include anything in the body. But I don't really like that. I like the whole pizza response version of this, because when you call that and it doesn't exist, you get a useful error message. So any developer talking to your API will get this error message that says pizza with ID of 1234 is not found. Also, when you're doing your UI calls to the backend, the UI will make a call to the backend, and if it encounters an error, it can then use this error message to then display to the user what the actual issue was. So this is very helpful when you're trying to talk to the UI and give it error messages.